Moving on to other issues as it affects the state of our nation is the state of tertiary hospitals and tertiary education institutions across the country. The federal government had promised a 50% electricity subsidy, but delayed implementation has seen a lot of these tertiary institutions grappling with electricity bills that have been unpaid and blackouts. Now, joining us this morning over the phone to discuss these issues are Lukman Babalola, as we look to invite him to join the conversation. Hello, good morning to you, Mr. Babalola.
Good morning to you. Good morning, Nigeria.
Can you hear me?
Good morning to you. Good morning, Nigerians.
Very welcome to the program. It's nice to have you. Let's talk about this situation, and prominently off the back of the situation in Ibadan, where the University Teaching Hospital, UCH, had been without power for over 107 days. Now, this is one of those issues that has evoked thoughts of Nigerians, and they're asking where the 50% subsidy as promised to tertiary institutions and hospitals in the country is. I don't know if you share these concerns and have anything to say in that regard.
Yes, it's unfortunate that such incident happened to the first teaching hospital in Nigeria. And government, unfortunately also, the Minister of Power is from Oyo State, Ibadan to be precise. So what is he doing? So it is a national embarrassment if we can have a power outage almost over 100 days and nothing has been done, and which led to this protest going on in the teaching hospital. So I believe government should be up and doing and tackle this issue of power failure. It's not only in the UCH, even when you go to other tertiary health institutions in Nigeria, the story remains the same.
Well, Mr. Babalola, we saw students, medical students of the University of Ibadan protesting over, this 100 days of blackouts at the University College Hospital in Ibadan, especially during the minister's recent visit with the management of the university, talking about Chief Bayo Adelabu, who had visited the varsity to discuss on plans to reinstate power to the UCH in Ibadan. Do you think that this protest might have some sort of effect in ensuring that the minister and the Ministry of Power fast tracks the return or of power, of course, to UCH Ibadan anytime soon?
The minister should not keep us waiting, because they are fond of yes, we will do it. There should be an immediate measures. Immediate measures is in the sense that the powers will be restored with immediate effect.
Now, the minister has not given exact reasons why this sort of power outage has lingered on for a very long time, and I believe it is one of the biggest questions on the minds of Nigerians, including myself. Do you perhaps in any way know why the UCH Ibadan has been without electricity for more than 100 days?
All this promise being made by the minister, to me, I believe it's a political talk. The way they talk is to tell you that tomorrow they will look into it. His visit, since that day that he visited the teaching hospital, or this UCH, to say, what has he done? What has been done to restore power? So they keep on giving us excuses.
Now, in August of 2024, I believe this is when this issue gained prominence. The Minister of Power, Chief Bayo Adelabu, made promises, particularly in that month, and he said that for institutions like themselves who are on Band A feeders, that's when the Band A characterization came up, that they would enjoy subsidies. Owing to the end of 2024, I remember the Lagos State Teaching Hospital lamented the bills they received in the months prior to that. They said they received as high as 100 million naira per month for electricity bills. And not only them, like you said, there are more hospitals and tertiary institutions that continue to receive what many would deem as outrageous bills. If the federal government had made such a promise last year, do you have good enough reasons as to know why the electricity distribution companies are not carried along? Because I believe that's where there is a gap in communication. This shortfall on the part of the distribution companies as against the promise made by the government to assist these hospitals. Do you think that the communication could have been better handled?
When this government came into power, I was expecting a serious overhauling of power sector, because those that the license to distribute power to Nigerians, they are failures. They will keep on increasing the tariff, the bill, estimated bill getting up every day, without serious commitment from their own side. So I think Nigerians should think, they should look beyond this distribution company. There should be a way to adopt what do we call it, alternative energy source, whereby, you know, like you see, they can come up with their own maybe power, solar power,
maybe off-grid power.
Hello?
Like off-grid power solutions, off-grid.
Yeah, something like that, so that they should not rely on this what's it called, IBDC, that's the Ibadan distribution company, because they can't handle the consumption. So that's what I look at, and the way I'm looking at it, though the GENCO, so to say, that's the generating company, also they have their own issue. The grid, the national grid keeps collapsing on daily basis.
If your state, okay. Lagos State was in the conversation this morning. We saw earlier on the papers to generate even above what Nigeria estimates as its capacity. They are targeting 8,500 megawatts, whilst Nigeria is grappling with being able to generate even 6,000 megawatts of electricity. Many continue to point to Lagos as quite the example of how a state can thrive and should even be a nation on its own, if possibly, in terms of its industrial growth. How is it possible that we have states like Lagos talking about generating 8,500 megawatts, while a whole nation, Nigeria, is grappling with less than 6,000 megawatts of electricity?
I give kudos to the governor of Lagos State. You know, though Lagos, they have been lucky to have governors who are performing. You know, even after when Asiwaju left, so other people that followed him, they keep on improving the economy activities in Lagos State. Because, you know, in Lagos State, they generate a lot of revenue through taxes and all that. And they are also doing their own part, providing what is required for the business to thrive. So I commend the Lagos State government for that. So, and I also want to appeal to other states to emulate such a style of governance. So I believe if they all adopted that style of governance, the government, the people who are paying tax to, will be willing to pay the tax for the government to generate revenue while the business thrives.
All right, Mr. Babalola, at a time when the entire nation continues to grapple with poor electricity across the country, many calls have been made for individuals to sort of generate their own power via the hybrid mini grids, talking about solar panels and all of that. And do you think that perhaps if we start looking inward towards our universities of technology or colleges of education, or even any institution at all that has to do with technology and all of that, we could devise means of creating alternative energy that will be sustainable enough to keep our hospitals running? Because as it appears right now, one of the most critical sectors that is bearing the brunt of this epileptic power situation is the health sector. Don't you think that perhaps our colleges of education and our universities of technology should come into the picture and salvage the situation?
Yes, governments will, I believe if we have enough resources, that is in terms of capital funding, that is funding of all these research institutes and technology institutions. we can also provide our own alternative power energy source. So I believe government, not only government, the university authorities should also look inward, get funding, require funding, and develop all these solar and other hybrid power generating source.
But when you say funding, are you talking about funding to buy the materials or funding for further research?
Yes, funding for research, so to say.
But what research will they need to do when it's already an institution of learning?
To be honest with you, some of these institutions don't have what is required. So you can't give what you don't have.
Is it safe to say that our education system is also in a state of disarray, much like the power sector and also much like the health sector?
Yes.
Then let's talk facts. Let's talk the reality on ground. Carry on, please, Mr. Babalola.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me? You were about to make a point concerning the universities and the technological institutions in the country and the role that they are supposed to play. But when you talk about more funding for research, I do not agree that there needs to be more funding for research, perhaps more funding for materials to be bought in order to implement some of these, to set some of these modalities into place. It doesn't take a humongous amount of research to be able to come up with a mini power grid to power certain hospitals in the country. Don't you agree to this?
Well, when you have the materials and you don't know how to use it, what will happen? So I believe they should be trained. There should be proper training for our students in the technology institutions, so that they will be able to come up with something that would, solve this power issue once and for all.
Okay.
Now, in the case of the UCH, we hear that a 48-hour ultimatum has been reached between the federal government, IBCD, and UCH to restore power to that facility. So we'll be looking forward to the next 48 hours. But talking about now, we're talking about funding. Another issue that continues to plague a lot of Nigerians is the housing deficit. I'd like us to discuss this, as the federal government says it has instituted a private fund for real estate under the Ministry of Finance to release 100 billion naira towards curbing Nigeria's housing deficit. I'd like you to react to this development as we look at some of the key details of how the private sector would drive this 100 billion naira facility to curb housing deficit in the country.
Well, the initiative is a good one. They should involve, just like they are involving the private sector to invest in, to tackle housing deficit in Nigeria. There's what we call BOT, that is build, own, and transfer. So a private individual or companies can build and, acquire land, build, then run it for a certain period of time, then give it back to the government. So why government take over and sell it to interested Nigerians? So it's a good one, and I believe it will work out.
But there's still also challenges with those who are under the pension and contributory scheme, who have monies deducted from their salaries towards accommodations that most of them retire and never really own those houses. It's continued to be a challenge in terms of that demographic of individuals in curbing the housing deficit. Are there any suggestions from you to the government on how to tackle this?
I think the new managing director of Federal Housing Authorities is addressing such. But I read somewhere that he has received some complaint concerning in that regard and is tackling it. So he should put more effort and address the issue.
When you say more efforts, is it on the part of those saddled with ensuring that those deductions are remitted, or in terms of allocating the houses? Because over time, people have monthly deductions. There's no stipulated timeline as to when they would expect to benefit from those houses. But even under the current administration, we're looking at policies and directive of the government to be able to allow persons access these funds towards housing. Do you think it's been a disconnect in the policy and its implementation?
I want you to know that most of these people that subscribe to this housing scheme did it through their financial institution, that is the banks, and also some did it through their cooperative societies.
Yeah.
So this has nothing to do with the government per se. So they should go back and ask those they subscribe through their what do you call it? That is those banks and cooperative society. So they should go back and ask what happened to their investments or what they contributed.
Let's talk about the Renewed Hope housing with regards to what the federal government is also doing, apart from the private sector driven facility to ensure mass housing is achieved across the country. When we talk about the Renewed Hope City, we hear that the federal government intends to make sure that civil servants get access to proper housing in certain parts or in different states of the nation. We saw what the presidency has started doing here in Abuja and in other parts of the country. However, the major concern of many individuals is with regards to accessibility of these houses. If you are not a civil servant, it appears that the Renewed Hope City is not for you. Apart from this 100 billion naira facility driven towards mass housing, what other modalities can the government sort of set in place to ensure that even if individuals are not in the civil service, they can at least gain access if they meet the necessary criteria to some of these Renewed Hope houses?
Yes, the Renewed Hope housing scheme is a good one, but it should go beyond the civil servants, so to say. Those who are also earning a living, that is the petty traders who could not afford to build their own house, should be involved too. So maybe just like I said earlier, this involving the private sector we also help. They should look beyond giving civil servants or only the civil servants the opportunity. Those who are not civil servants should also be a beneficiary to the scheme. So maybe through a kind of an initiative whereby you can, maybe whatever you are earning in a month or year, you should have a certain percentage to keep to the mortgage bank, or there should be a proposed, though we have
Bank of Industry?
What do you call it? Not really Bank of Industry. No, but that's a Federal Mortgage Bank. So they should give them the opportunity to handle such funds. Thereby, if I'm earning like 100,000 a month as a private business person, I should be able to take 20,000 out of it as my contribution for such a project.
Well, in the past,
in the
past,
the government will now come in, give me the opportunity to own the house, then and pay the rest amounts.
Subsequently, I believe you're going to say.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Babalola. In the past, we know that building houses in the country used to be not much of a Herculean task, and even somebody earning within the civil service, not a very high grade civil servant, could afford a home at some point and a car and all of that. But now owning a house appears for many people to be a dream that is almost unattainable unless the federal government sort of intervenes in this, like the mass housing scheme that we are seeing being implemented by the federal government. Is there a way that we can sort of revert to those old glory days of individuals being able to own houses with so much ease and not necessarily having to wait for some sort of intervention by the government to be able to do so?
Yes, I think my suggestion is this. Most of these building materials are imported to Nigeria, and the importers pay heavily as the duties for them to bring such materials to Nigeria. So government should look at a way of giving them, or should I say it, a tax holiday or a kind of subsidy, whereby so if you are bringing materials to Nigeria, building materials to Nigeria, it should the what you are paying at the port should be lesser, so that you'll be able to sell at an affordable prices for those who are willing to buy. So and this will also help those who are earning the low income earner to have their own houses.
Well, Mr. Babalola, before we let you go, it's a final question we'd want to ask. We see different administrations unroll their blueprints. Before now, the administration under the then President Muhammadu Buhari prioritized humanitarian interventions through the N-Power, trader money, and petty cash available. This administration seems to have jettisoned those programs and are looking at the renewed hope initiatives towards housing schemes. Who is to say that after another term in office for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, most likely the next administration would not jettison this initiative and would not be back to square one? What do you make of this prism that says government is a continuum despite the discontinuity in policies and programs of successive governments?
Well, I believe the current government, they are also working on how to bring back Empower. Because about a month or thereabout or 2 weeks ago, I read it somewhere whereby the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs are now coming up with something similar to Empower. So if they can bring such initiative back to Nigerians, for Nigerians to benefit, is a good one. Like you win that was introduced by the President Goodluck Jonathan administration. Nigerians benefited a lot. Though it's a kind of a competitive initiative, whereby you submit a proposal, a business proposal, and at the end of the day, if you win, then you get your funding. So this will bring back such, and it will reduce poverty, and also help our youth to contribute their quotas to Nigerian economy.
Well, we must thank you, Mr. Lukman Babalola, for taking our time to share your thoughts on these issues. We appreciate you.
It's my pleasure.